Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of All Things Lean with your host, Madhulika Rajahan. In our last episode, we talked about the 5 stages in design thinking process. In this episode, we will talk about design thinking first stage, empathize with your users. Design thinking cannot begin without a deeper understanding of the people you're designing for. In order to gain those insights, it is important for you as a design thinker to empathize with people you're designing for so that you can understand their needs, thoughts, emotions, and motivations. The good news is that you have a wide range of methods at your command for learning more about people. The even better news is with enough mindfulness and experience, anyone can become a master at empathizing with people. In 2013, D School Bootcamp Bootleg, it was stated that engaging with people directly reveals a tremendous amount about the way they think and the values they hold. Sometimes these thoughts and values are not obvious to people who hold them. A deep engagement can surprise both the designer and the designee by the unanticipated insights that are different from what they actually do, are strong indicators of their deeply held beliefs about the way the world is. The first stage or mode of the design thinking process involves developing a sense of empathy towards the people you're designing for, to gain insights into what they need, what they want, how they behave, feel, and think, and why they demonstrate such behaviors, feelings, and thoughts when interacting with products in a real world setting. To gain empathy towards people, we as design thinkers often observe them in their natural environments, passively or engage them in interviews. Also, as design thinkers, we should try to imagine ourselves in these users' environment or stepping into their shoes, as the saying goes, in order to gain a deeper understanding of their situation. In the following section, we will outline some methods from D-School Bootcamp Bootleg that will allow you to gain empathy towards your users. We must understand that the 5 stages of design thinking are not always sequential. They do not have to follow any specific order, and you will find that they can often occur in parallel and you can repeat them iteratively. As such, the stages should be understood as different modes that contribute to a project rather than sequential steps. However, most projects begin with an empathizing phase. Empathize, the first phase of design thinking where you gain real insight into users and their needs. The first stage of the design thinking process focuses on user-centric research. You want to gain an empathetic understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. Consult experts to find out more about the area of concern and conduct observations to engage and empathize with your users. You may also want to immerse yourself in your user's physical environment to gain a deeper personal understanding of the issues involved, as well as their experiences and motivations. Empathy is crucial to problem solving and a human-centered design process as it allows design thinkers to set aside their own assumptions about the world and gain real insight into users and their needs. Depending on time constraints, you will gather a substantial amount of information to use during the next stage. The main aim of the empathize stage is to develop the best possible understanding of your users, their needs, and the problems that underlie the development of the product or service you want to create. Therefore, assuming a beginner's mindset is important. The mode dial of a Canon EOS digital SLR camera. How would a beginner photographer know what to choose? To help beginners, fully automatic modes are represented with icons on the dial, which makes it easy for a non-expert to guess what they mean. Example, clockwise from top, video, night portrait, sports, close-up, etc. Icons are also universal, that is, independent of language. More advanced or expert modes are shown with abbreviations. You really need to read the manual before you use these. Like TV does not mean television, but time value. That is the shutter priority. You can only imagine how much confusion this must cause to a novice Canon user. Nikon uses single letters instead for the advanced modes. If we are to empathize with users, we should always try to adopt the mindset of a beginner. What this means is that a designer or design thinkers, we should always do our best to leave our own assumptions and expertise behind when making observations. Our life experiences create assumptions within us, which we use to explain and make sense of the world around us. However, this very process affects our ability to empathize in a real way with the people we observe, since completely letting go of our assumptions is practically impossible, regardless of how much of a checkered reputation the word assumption has. We should constantly and consciously remind ourselves to assume a beginner's mindset. It's helpful if you always remind yourself never to judge what you observe, but to question everything, even if you think you know the answer, and to really listen to what others are saying. Ask what, how, and why. UX designers' attitudes towards their work stems from natural curiosity, inquisitive behavior, and constant critical appraisal of everything they encounter. Looking for the underlying factors and motives that drive users' behaviors and needs is what leads to successful design. By asking the three questions, what, how, why, we can move from a concrete observations that are free from assumptions to a more abstract motivations driving the actions we have observed. During our observations, for instance, we might find separately recordings the whats, hows, and whys of a person's single observation helpful. In what, we record the details, not assumptions of what has happened. In how, we analyze how the person is doing what he or she is doing. Is he or she exerting a lot of effort? Is this individual smiling or frowning? Finally, in why, we make educated guesses regarding the person's motivations and emotions. These motivations can then test with the user. Photo and video-based studies. Photographing or recording target users, like other empathizing methods, can help you uncover needs that people have which they may or may not be aware of. It can help guide your innovation efforts, identify the right end users to design for, and discover emotions that guide behaviors. In user camera-based studies, users are photographed or filmed either in a natural setting or during sessions with the design team or consultants you've hired to gather information. For example, you might identify a group of people who possess certain characteristics that are representative of your target audience. You record them while they are experiencing the problem you are aiming to solve. You can refresh your memory at a later time with things people said, feelings that were evoked, and behaviors that you identified. You can then easily share these with the rest of your team. Personal photo and video journals. In this method, you hand over the camera to your users and give them instructions, namely to take pictures of or video record their activities during a specified period. The advantage is that you don't interfere or disturb the users with your personal presence, even though they will adapt and change their normal behavior slightly as they know that you are watching the video or see the photo general later. In a similar way to using personas, by engaging real people as designers, we gain invaluable personal experience and stories that keep the human aspect of design firmly in mind throughout the whole process. While we probably know deep down what limits are involved when three people are trying to use one phone, there's nothing like the first-hand evidence of a live and recorded performance to put this front and center in our awareness from the onset. With that in mind, let's hear from IDEO, a leading international design consulting firm founded in California in 1991. They say we use this method to go beyond, as in person interviews, to better understand a person's context, people who surround them, community dynamics, and the journey through how they use a product or service. Photojournals can help create a foundation for rich discussions as they prime an individual before an interview, which means they start thinking about the subject a few days in advance. Interviews. One-on-one interviews can be a productive way to connect with real people and gain insights. Talking directly to the people you're designing for may be the best way to understand needs, hopes, desires, and goals. The benefits are similar to video and camera-based studies, but interviews are generally structured, and interviewers will typically have a set of questions they wish to ask their interviewees. Interviews, therefore, offer the personal intimacy and directness of other observation methods, while allowing the design team to target specific areas of information to direct the design thinking process. Most of the work happens before the interviews. Team members will brainstorm to generate questions to ask users and create themes or topics around the interview questions so they can flow smoothly from one to another. Engaging with extreme users. By focusing on the extremes, you will find that the problems, needs, and methods of solving problems become magnified. First, you must identify the extremes of your potential user base. Then, you should engage with this group to establish their feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. And then, look at the needs you might find in all users. Consider what makes a user extreme, and you will tend to notice it's the circumstances involved. A basic example is a grocery store shopping cart and a shopper with five very young children in tow. There are two fold-down seats in the cart, but the other kids, who are also too young to walk, must go somewhere. Our shopper is therefore an extreme user of the shopping cart design. On the one hand, if you can manage to please an extreme user, you should certainly be able to keep your main body of users happy. On the other hand, it is important to note that the purpose of engaging with extreme users is not to develop solutions for those users, but to sieve out problems that mainstream users might have trouble voicing. However, in many cases, the needs of extreme users tend to overlap with the needs of the majority of the population. So while you may not be able to keep everyone happy at all times with your design, you can certainly improve the chances that it will not frustrate users. Analogous empathy. Using analogies can help the design team to develop new insights. By comparing one domain with another, we as designers can conjure different solutions that would not necessarily come to mind when working within the constraints of one discipline. For example, the highly stressful and time-sensitive procedure of operating on a patient in a hospital emergency room might be analogous to the process of refueling and replacing the tires of a race car in a pit stop. Some of the methods you might use in analogous sympathy or empathy include comparing your problem and another in a different field, creating an inspiration board with notes and pictures, and focusing on similar aspects between multiple areas. Sharing inspiring stories. In the words of the great author Terry Pratchett, people think that stories are shaped by people. In fact, it's the other way around. We might paraphrase slightly here, as it's true that products are shaped by the stories that people tell about them. Each person in a design team will collect different pieces of information, have different thoughts, and come up with different solutions. For this reason, you should share your inspiring stories to collect all of the team members' research from field studies, interviews, etc. By sharing the stories that each member has observed, the team can get up to speed on progress, draw meaning from the stories, and capture interesting details of the observation work. Body storming. A person wearing special goggles that simulates vision impairments trying to accomplish a simple task, that is seizing a grain of rice with the tweezers and moving it to adjust empty containers. Acting out different scenarios can help the researchers themselves better understand the problems that a particular user group might face. This is literally stepping into the user's shoes. Body storming is the act of physically experiencing a situation in order to immerse oneself fully in user's environment. This requires a considerable amount of planning and effort, as the environment must be filled with the artifacts present in the real-world environment, and the general atmosphere or feel must accurately depict the user's setting. Body storming puts the team in the user's shoes, thereby boosting the feelings of empathy we need as designers in order to come up with the first fitting solutions. Having the real-life experience will serve as a reference point for later in the process, enabling us to stop, sit back, and ask ourselves, remember, when we tried being the user, how would this new thing fit in with that? Let's talk about the takeaways. When we are in design thinking team, we have a wealth of ways at our disposal to enable us to empathize with our users. Collectively, these methods offer our insight into the user's needs and how they think, feel, and behave. Each method attempts to enhance the design team's understanding of their target user and market, and to appreciate exactly what user needs and wants from their products. Observation method will not only enable us to gather raw data, statistics, and demographics, they will also offer opportunities for us to draw insights that we can then apply in designing a solution. Empathizing with users is an essential component of the design thinking process. To ignore the benefits of learning from others is to forget what design thinking is truly about. Hence, we must, to an appropriate degree, become our users if we are to offer them fine-tuned solutions that lead in the market. With this, we come to an end to this episode of All Things Lean. We will continue to talk about design thinking in more details in your upcoming sessions. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment in the comment section on what you'd like to hear more. Until next time, this is your host, Madhulika Rajahan, signing off. Have a wonderful day ahead.